I turned 46 on a Thursday. It was raining, not hard, just the kind that leaves streaks on the window and makes the house smell faintly like damp wood. I remember thinking how quiet it was. Too quiet, maybe. Mark, my husband, had left early that morning, said something about a long day ahead. He kissed my cheek on his way out, quick, distracted. I told him I'd stay home and finish grading papers. I didn't expect much from the day. After 20 years of marriage, birthdays become polite gestures. A card, maybe dinner somewhere we've already been too many times. By noon, the rain had turned into a fine mist. I made myself tea, scrolled through messages, students, colleagues, a few obligatory happy birthdays. Nothing from Mark yet. I told myself he was busy. Then the doorbell rang. When I opened it, Eli was standing there, Mark's cousin, younger by nearly 20 years, though he carried himself like someone older. He was holding a box, rain dripping from his hair onto his jacket. "Happy birthday, Clara," he said, smiling in that unsure way of his. Mark said I should drop this off for him. He's tied up at work. The box was wrapped neatly, silver paper, black ribbon. I took it, thanked him, and stepped aside when he hesitated on the porch. "Come in for a minute," I said because it felt wrong not to. He hesitated, then wiped his shoes on the mat and followed. The living room smelled faintly of vanilla and dust. I noticed how he looked around. Not nosy, just curious, like he was memorizing things. We sat, the air between us polite but uncertain. I asked about his new job at the museum. He asked about my classes. Normal conversation. Still, I caught him watching me sometimes, as if he wanted to say something else but didn't know how. When I unwrapped the box, I found an old-style fountain pen inside, the exact kind I'd once mentioned years ago when Mark and I visited an antique store. I'd said it reminded me of my father, who used to write letters by hand. I never thought Mark had remembered. But inside the box, there was no card, no note, just the pen. I glanced up at Eli. He was tracing the rim of his mug with his finger, looking anywhere but at me. "Did Mark pick this out?" I asked. He opened his mouth, then closed it again. "He said it would mean something to you." Something about his voice made me set the pen down carefully. The rain outside grew louder. Before I could ask anything else, his phone buzzed. He looked at the screen, then stood quickly. "I should go," he said. "Happy birthday again, Clara." He was halfway to the door when I noticed the small envelope still inside the box, hidden beneath the wrapping paper. My name written in handwriting that wasn't Mark's. I didn't open it. Not yet. The rain kept falling, and the house didn't feel quiet anymore. It felt like it was waiting for something. I didn't open the envelope that night. It sat on the table beside the pen, edges damp from the rain that had followed Eli in. Every time I passed it, my eyes caught the curve of my name written in unfamiliar ink, softer, less practiced than Mark's sharp, businesslike handwriting. By evening, the house felt too big. I poured a glass of wine and watched the rain fade into drizzle, the windows smudged with gray light. Mark texted at 8:12 p.m., "Sorry, still at work. Don't wait up." That was it. No mention of the gift or Eli. I told myself it didn't matter. But it did. It wasn't about the pen or the envelope. It was about the smallness of the gesture, the quiet proof that someone, somewhere, had remembered a detail I'd forgotten I'd shared. Eli and I had met only a few times before. Family gatherings mostly. Christmas, one summer barbecue years ago. He was still in grad school then, asking me about art theory, his voice unsure but eager. I'd liked him immediately. The way he listened without interrupting, how he seemed to see things most people missed. After that, I'd hear about him occasionally through Mark. Eli got a job at the museum. Eli's back in town. Always said in passing. I never thought much of it. Until now. The next morning, the envelope was still there. I made coffee and sat at the table, the steam fogging my glasses as I turned it over in my hands. My thumb brushed the seal, unbroken, deliberate. When I finally slid it open, I expected something simple. Maybe a thank you note or instructions for the pen. But there were only 5 words on the small piece of paper inside. He said you'd understand someday. That was it. No signature. No explanation. I read it 3 times, my pulse quickening without reason I could name. I assumed, meant Mark, but the phrasing felt wrong. like something private had slipped through by mistake. I tucked the note back into the envelope and placed it in the drawer beneath old receipts and unused keys. Still, my mind kept circling it. Later that week, Eli texted, "A simple message. Forgot something at your place. Mind if I stop by?" It was the first time he'd reached out directly. I typed back before I could second-guess it, "Sure. I'll be home after 5. When I put down my phone, the room felt smaller again. The quiet wasn't peaceful this time. It pressed in around me like the house was listening. And for reasons I couldn't explain, I found myself cleaning the living room, refilling the vase with fresh flowers, and setting out 2 mugs instead of 1. Eli arrived right on time, 5 o'clock sharp. The rain had stopped, but the sky still hung low and heavy, the kind of gray that made everything feel slower. I'd left the door unlocked. Somehow, that felt easier than waiting for the bell. He stepped inside quietly, the same polite half-smile on his face. "Sorry for the trouble," he said, holding his bag awkwardly. "I think I left my notebook here the other day." I motioned toward the table. "Check there. That's where we Saturday." While he searched, I tried not to stare. His presence filled the room in a strange way. Not loud or demanding, but noticeable. Like a song you don't realize is playing until it stops. After a moment, he found a notebook, leather-bound, old, the kind people keep sketches or thoughts in. He flipped it open, glanced through a few pages, then looked at me. "You didn't open it, did you?" I shook my head. "No. Should I have?" He smiled faintly, as if he'd expected me to ask something else. "No, it's just personal notes." There was an awkward pause, the kind that lingers. I poured coffee for both of us, mostly to fill the silence. He took the cup, fingers brushing mine barely. Then, quietly, "Did you like the pen?" The question caught me off guard. "It's beautiful," I said. "Thank you. I didn't know you picked it out." Eli looked down, tracing the handle of the mug. "Mark asked me to find something meaningful. I just remembered what you said about your father." I froze. That conversation had happened years ago, in a shop where Mark hadn't even been paying attention. "You remembered that?" He gave a small shrug. "Some things just stay." Something in his tone felt heavier than it should have. I didn't answer. The air between us shifted, not uncomfortable, but charged with everything neither of us said. Then his phone buzzed again. He looked at the screen, frowning, and tucked it away quickly. I noticed the name that flashed just before he did. Mark. He stood abruptly, muttering something about needing to go. I followed him to the door, unsure what to say. When he stepped out, he paused. "Clara," he said softly, without turning around. "If anything feels strange, just ask him directly. Don't wait." Then he left. The door closed, and the quiet came back, but this time it wasn't just quiet. It was uneasy, like the house knew something I didn't. That night, I checked the drawer again. The envelope was gone. I searched the entire house that night. Every drawer, every table, even the space beneath the couch cushions, nothing. The envelope was gone. At first, I told myself I'd misplaced it. Maybe I'd moved it without thinking. But the more I looked, the more certain I became that someone had taken it. Only 2 people had been here since I opened it, Mark and Eli. Mark came home late again, nearly midnight. His tie was loose, his eyes tired but guarded. "Why are you still up?" he asked, hanging his jacket over the chair. "I couldn't sleep," I said, keeping my tone even. "Did you talk to Eli today?" He paused just a second too long. "No." "What?" I shrugged. "He stopped by earlier. Said he forgot something." Mark nodded, looking away as he poured himself a drink. "He mentioned he might. Everything okay?" There it was, the calm tone he used when he didn't want me to ask more. The one that said, "Leave it alone." But I couldn't. Not anymore. I want to tell him about the missing envelope, about the strange note. He said you'd understand someday. But something stopped me. Maybe it was the way he didn't meet my eyes. Or how his hand tightened slightly around the glass when I said Eli's name. "I think he left something else here," I said finally. "What kind of something?" "I'm not sure. But it's gone now." Mark let out a small laugh. Not a real one. More like a breath disguised as humor. "Maybe you misplaced it. You've been distracted lately." He turned toward the stairs, his voice softening. "Go to bed, Clara. It's late." When he was gone, I sat there for a long time, staring at the faint ring his glass had left on the counter. The next morning, Eli didn't show up at work. I only knew because I called the museum, said I needed to ask about an exhibit. The woman who answered said he'd taken a few days off. Family emergency, she said. Family. By afternoon, I'd driven to the museum myself. His office was locked, lights off. Through the window, I could see a half-open notebook on the desk, the same one he'd retrieved from my house. There was something written on the open page, a single line scrawled in hurried ink. He's not telling you everything. That was when I realized this wasn't about the pen or the birthday or even the letter. It was about whatever secret connected the two of them, my husband and his cousin, and the uneasy feeling that I was standing right in the middle of it without knowing why. The words in Eli's notebook stayed with me all day. He's not telling you everything. I drove home slower than usual, headlights slicing through the thin rain. My mind kept circling questions I didn't want to ask. What Mark told Eli? What could possibly need to be hidden? When I walked into the house, the lights were already on. Mark was sitting at the kitchen table, sleeves rolled up, a folder open in front of him. He looked up as if he'd been waiting. "You're home late," he said. His tone was casual, but his eyes weren't. "I went by the museum," I answered. "I wanted to talk to Eli." Something flickered across his face. Irritation, maybe worry. Gone too quickly to name. "You what?" "He didn't come in," I said. "And someone said he took time off. I just wanted to make sure he was okay." Mark leaned back in his chair. "You've been thinking a lot about Eli lately." That tone again, calm but sharp underneath. "Because he's acting strange," I said. "And because I found a note that doesn't make sense." "What note?" "The one in the box. The one that said, 'He said you'd understand someday.'" For a moment, Mark didn't move. Then he stood, walked to the sink, and turned on the water. "That's nonsense," he said over the running tap. Probably something Eli thought sounded mysterious. But his shoulders were tense, his jaw tight. "Mark," I said quietly, "why would Eli write something like that?" He didn't answer, just stared out the window at the dark yard. The sound of the water filled the silence. Then, almost too softly to hear, he said, "He shouldn't have involved you." My stomach dropped. "Involve me in what?" Mark turned off the water and faced me. "There's something you don't know about Eli. About his father." I blinked. "His father?" I thought. "He's my half-brother." Mark interrupted. "Same father. Different mothers. It's complicated." I just stood there, trying to piece it together. "Why didn't you ever tell me?" "Because it doesn't matter," he said quickly. "It was a long time ago. And Eli, he doesn't handle things well. He likes to stir trouble." But there was something else behind his voice. Not anger, not exactly guilt, but fear. Later, after he'd gone upstairs, I opened the folder he'd left on the table. Inside were old letters, faded photographs, and a birth certificate. Eli's name, his mother's name, and under father, a name I recognized, Michael R. Turner. Mark's father. I closed the folder slowly, my hands trembling. It explained the tension between them, but not the secrets, not the warnings. Before I could think, my phone buzzed. A message from an unknown number. The next evening, the air felt heavy, that strange stillness before a storm. I parked near the pier, the wooden boards slick with mist, the sky bruised with dark clouds. A single figure stood near the end, hood pulled up, hands buried in his jacket pockets. Eli. When he turned, I could see how tired he looked, eyes hollow, like he hadn't slept in days. "You came," he said, almost sounding surprised. "You sent the message," I replied. "You said not to believe Mark. So tell me what's going on." He looked past me for a moment, toward the water, as if finding the right words. "Mark isn't who you think he is, Clara. The gift wasn't supposed to come from him. It was from me. The pen, the note, all of it. I wanted to tell you something that day, but he found out. Why would he care?" I asked. "It's just a gift." Eli shook his head. "No, it's more than that. That pen, it belonged to your father. Mark bought it from an estate auction years ago. He knew it, but he never told you. He didn't want you asking why he was even there." My heart thudded. Why would that matter? "Because the auction was for your father's personal belongings," Eli said quietly. "He was one of the estate managers then, before you met. He kept things, personal things. He said it was a favor, but..." He stopped, studying my face. "You didn't know, did you?" The air felt thinner, colder. "Mark told me my father's letters were lost. Burned. They weren't. Eli reached into his bag and pulled out a small bundle of papers tied with frayed string. I found these when I was helping him move old boxes at the firm last year. Letters from your father. To you. Never sent. I stared at them, my hands shaking. He kept these from me? Eli nodded. He said he didn't want to upset you. But I think he just didn't want to explain why he'd had them all this time. For a long moment, all I could hear was the sound of the waves hitting the pier. Then headlights cut through the fog. A car pulling up fast. Mark. He slammed the door and started toward us. Rain beginning to fall again. Clara, he said sharply. Step away from him. Eli took a step closer to me. She deserves the truth. Mark's expression shifted, not anger, but something closer to regret. It's not what you think, he said. And then, almost pleading, please just come home. Let me explain there. But as the rain poured harder, I realized something I hadn't before. Neither of them looked entirely sure who they were protecting anymore. The rain came down harder, flattening the sound of everything else, cars, voices, even the ocean. For a moment, we just stood there, the three of us, frozen between truth and whatever came after it. Mark looked older than I'd ever seen him. His hair plastered to his forehead, water dripping from his collar. He took a step closer, careful, like approaching something fragile. Clara, he said quietly, I should have told you. About the letters. About your father. I didn't want to lie. I just didn't know how to tell you that I'd been part of the team handling his estate. I found those letters, and I kept them because I thought they'd hurt you. Ilias Yovdiktenet. You should have let her decide that. Mark turned to him. You think I don't know that now? His voice cracked slightly, more weary than defensive. I made a mistake. A big one. But I wasn't trying to hide from myself, Eli. I was trying to protect her. I didn't move. I just looked between them, two men tied to the same truth, both certain they were right. Finally, I said, you both decided what I needed without asking me. They went quiet. The wind picked up, tossing water against the pier. I took the letters from Eli's hand. The paper soft, edges worn. These are mine, I said, and I'll read them when I'm ready. Alone. Neither argued. Mark looked like he wanted to reach for me, but didn't. I know you don't have to forgive me, he said, but I hope someday you'll understand why I did it. I nodded, but I didn't answer. There wasn't anything left to say out loud. When I finally walked away, I didn't look back. The rain blurred everything, the lights, the outlines of the pier, until the world looked softer, quieter again. Later, at home, I made tea and sat by the window. The letters lay in a small pile on the table beside the fountain pen. I opened one, my father's handwriting familiar, shaky but warm. If you ever find these, it means life went the way it had to. Don't hold anger where love used to be. Just keep living the parts one didn't get to. I folded the page carefully, a quiet breath leaving my chest. Outside, the rain eased into a mist again, the same as it had been on my birthday. Only this time, the silence didn't feel empty. It felt like something had finally finished breaking, and now maybe it could start a mend.